Professor Zelana prided herself on maintaining the most disciplined telepathic studies classroom in the prestigious Nexus Academy. For 3 centuries, she had guided young psychic minds through the delicate art of mental projection and thought sharing with never so much as a disruption. Her students, carefully selected from the galaxy's most mentally gifted species, practiced their exercises in harmonious silence, their minds creating gentle ripples in the psychic atmosphere like stones dropped into a still pond. Today, however, she had been required to accommodate a new student, a human exchange cadet from the recently contacted Deathworld Sol 3. Cadet Sarah Chen sat quietly in the back row, appearing to pay attention as Professor Zelana demonstrated basic thought projection techniques. The human seemed harmless enough. No natural psychic abilities detected, which was typical for her species. She was here merely to observe and learn about galactic mental disciplines. "Now, class," Professor Zelana announced, her thoughts flowing smoothly to her students through the shared mental link. "We will practice group meditation. Focus your minds on peaceful imagery. Let your thoughts harmonize with your classmates." The familiar calm descended over the classroom as 23 psychic students synchronized their mental patterns. Gentle images of flowing water, soft meadows, and tranquil skies filled the shared consciousness. Professor Zelana nodded approvingly as the collective meditation deepened. Then something began to intrude on the peaceful mental landscape. At first, it was just a distant rumble, like thunder on a far horizon. Professor Zelana frowned, scanning her students' mental patterns for the source of disruption. The rumble grew louder, accompanied by what sounded like music? Aggressive, rhythmic music with a driving beat that made the telepathic space throb. Suddenly, the serene mental meadow erupted into chaos. A massive mechanical construct burst through the peaceful imagery, a bipedal war machine bristling with weapons, its metal hide scarred by countless battles. It strode across the mental landscape, each footstep sending shockwaves through the shared consciousness. Behind it came more machines, an entire army of steel titans engaged in spectacular combat across an urban wasteland. "What is this?" Professor Zelana gasped, her mental voice barely audible over the sound of explosive weapons and clashing metal. The human in the back row continued to sit quietly, apparently unaware that her mere presence was transforming the classroom's shared mental space into a war zone. Fighter aircraft screamed overhead, dropping ordnance on towering enemy fortresses, while massive artillery pieces returned fire with earth-shaking explosions. Student Valkyria the Ethereal Communion collapsed from her meditation pose, her crystalline form resonating with harmonic distress. "Professor, the images. They're so violent, so detailed." "Where are these thoughts coming from?" demanded student Thrixvio, his tentacles writhing as he struggled to maintain mental equilibrium against the onslaught of combat imagery. Professor Zelana traced the source of the mental chaos and stared in horror at the human cadet, who was absently doodling in a notebook while apparently lost in thought. "Miss Chen!" she called aloud, abandoning telepathic communication entirely. Sarah looked up with mild surprise. "Yes, Professor." The moment the human's attention shifted, the war-torn battlefield vanished from the shared consciousness, replaced once again by peaceful meadows. The sudden transition left half the class mentally reeling. "Miss Chen," Professor Zelana said carefully, "what were you thinking about just now?" Sarah glanced at her notebook, which was filled with sketches of mechanical warriors. "Oh, sorry, Professor. I was just daydreaming about this new strategy game I want to try when I get back to Earth." "It's about giant robot battles. I was thinking about different tactical formations and weapon loadouts. Did I miss something important?" The telepathic student stared at the human in collective amazement. Student Keltar, whose species communicated entirely through thought, managed to whisper. She wasn't even trying to project. "Those were just casual thoughts?" "Miss Chen," Professor Zelana said slowly. Your idle daydreaming just overwhelmed 23 trained psychic minds, with imagery so vivid and intense that it disrupted our shared meditation space. Sarah blinked. Really? Huh? Is that bad? Professor Zelana looked around at her traumatized students, several of whom were still recovering from exposure to what they would later describe as weaponized imagination. Miss Chen, she said finally, I think we need to have a discussion about human mental intensity. Perhaps you could practice thinking about something less explosive? Sarah nodded cheerfully. Sure thing, Professor. I'll think about something peaceful instead. As the class resumed meditation, Professor Zelana monitored the humans' mental emanations carefully. The peaceful thoughts that emerged were indeed calmer than the robot battle, but somehow, the detailed imagery of a human military unit surviving behind enemy lines in hostile jungle terrain wasn't exactly what she'd had in mind when she requested peaceful. She made a mental note to recommend that future human exchange students attend classes designed for non-psychic species. The galaxy's telepathic educational system, she realized, was simply not prepared for minds that could casually generate military science fiction scenarios as background daydreams.